Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday. All right. Welcome to The Friday Habit.
Hey, Mark.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing awesome. I just turned 36, so
let's go.
Feeling good. Halfway to 72, as I like to call it.
That's awesome. Well, hey, I'm happy today because we have Pamela Gail Johnson on the podcast, and she is an author who wrote Practical Happiness. And I'm hoping to glean some information on how I can maintain my happiness and maybe principles to improve my life. So
I don't think you need any more happiness, Mark. It might just start getting a little annoying at that point. So,
well, Pamela Gail Johnson founded the Society of Happy People in 1998. She created the first 3 globally celebrated happiness holidays and is the author of Practical Happiness: 4 Principles to Improve Your Life. She was an award-winning salesperson for American Express and Staples, and now helps leaders and teams create happier workplace cultures. Pamela, welcome to The Friday Habit.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. And you guys do look pretty happy. You just did celebration, which is one of our 31 types of happiness when you celebrate a birthday, and you cannot have too much happiness.
Okay, got it.
Not even
good to know.
See, I knew it.
I take back my comment. I apologize. I will be silent for the rest of the episode.
But no, you get to have as much happiness as you want, and so does Mark. So you don't have to have the same amounts. You can have different amounts.
Gotcha.
That's
there
okay.
You go.
That's because it gets to the first principle of the book, which is happiness is personal. So no 2 of us will necessarily, either find and or want the exact same amount of happiness. But I don't know too many people who secretly hope to have happiness zappers. But
the problem is I'm always trying to push my happiness on other people who are not happy, and they're
keep it to yourself.
Yeah,
Mark.
they're like, "Why are you so happy?" I'm like, "Sorry."
we can discuss the pitfall of that.
Okay, good. Well, hey, first of all, I just want to kind of get to know you a little bit. When your book came across my desk, I was like, oh, this is right up my alley. I like happiness. And so, but I would love to hear about kind of what brought you to that space. I mean, I can imagine reading your bio that you were just crushing it at your jobs because you were happy. And then you're like, wow, like why am I having so much success and other people aren't? And you distilled that down to your attitude of happiness, or what's the story there?
Well, okay. So prior to those corporate jobs in the bigger corporations, I worked in the self-help field for in the addiction and mental health fields for about a decade. And it was at the height of the self-help movement. So again, y'all were probably in school, but you got all your mom talked about what Oprah was saying, or maybe Jerry Springer, or just some of these different self-help gurus. You probably know their names. And I just kept thinking, by being in the field, I was like, well, we're all happy people. We spend a lot of time overcoming our wounds or problems or whatever, but like, where are all these happy people? That was really this kind of burning question I had, even though I worked in the field. And so that's really what got my interest in happiness. And around the same time I started the Society of Happy People, the positive psychology movement research came out. And that's where we really started learning and looked at happiness in the workplace. So for the last couple of decades, we really put a lot of research into how does happiness help you? Like, we all know happiness feels good, right? I mean, do you really, even if you have different levels of happiness, do you ever really wake up and go, I am really no pain. I spend the whole day being chronically cranky because, that's how I want to feel. No.
No, can't say I've never experienced that.
Yeah, nobody really wakes up with that as an aspiration. Now, it happens because sometimes maybe we're really going through a difficult experience. Maybe we just got laid off. We got a pink slip or whatever. Or even in our robust economy, there's still some changes going on. So maybe you had a boss you loved and your boss got promoted. And now, or they went to a different company and you're like, which idiot am I going to work for now? I mean, that's what team sort of
Right.
thing. If you own your own business, I know no entrepreneur who says, and prior to those careers, my first out of college job was junior achievement. So teaching kids about business and entrepreneurship was I did that for 5 years. But no, I don't know entrepreneur who's like, you know what? I have absolutely nothing to do on my to-do list. At best, you say I have my must-dos done. All of today's must-dos are done, but I still have 99 things on the list if I had a magic wand that I would like to have accomplished or whatever a number is. So we don't aspire to that. But like you said, those things happen. Now, what we sometimes, I think, are challenged by with happiness, and so that's at work or wherever. But again, as this research started coming out, we started basing happiness on science. Everything was the science of happiness, so to speak. And science is great, but happiness really starts with what's between your ears or your eyes. It starts with, what are you looking for? It starts with, what do you want? But as you guys just have kind of alluded to, Mark, it sounds like you have a higher happiness set point than maybe you do, Ben. So it doesn't mean you're not both happy. You can both be happy, but it might be, you might be a little bit more content or in a more peaceful state. You know, you may look at happiness like that, and you may be wanting to be more like fun and on a roller coaster and just, saying yay and laughing. And so your energy vibe of happiness for your set point could be higher. And then again, there's nothing unhappy about either experience. It's just they're different. And so, like I said, happiness, and when you look at the success of happiness, whether it's in entrepreneurship, and actually entrepreneurs are happier than people who are in a traditional workplace environment typically. Studies show that even though they work more hours and sometimes for less actual money, they're happier, by the way. I did some interviews on that one year, and that was probably like 2 or 3 years ago, pre-COVID. So it could be like 3 or 4 years ago. But I did some interviews about that set point. So they are more successful. I mean, people, when we're happy, we attract more positive experiences, even if we're dealing with chaos. Let's say we're dealing with an unhappy customer. That I don't care where you work or if it's an internal or an external customer, you're going to sometimes know somebody's not happy with something, and you're going to deal with it different if you wake up and you're feeling good, because that's how I define happiness, when we naturally feel good. When you're feeling good versus, if you're waking up and you're like, my head hurts, my face, I got sinuses going on because it's spring, my eyes are running, and I want to curl up in a ball because I'm having a sinus attack. That's not a happy day. Health-wise, you're going to deal with it better when you're feeling good. And then everybody has a more positive experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like happiness to you is like when you're feeling good.
Naturally. When you're naturally.
Oh, when you're naturally feeling good. Okay, I gotcha. When you're naturally feeling good. So like, weird question, but does this count as happiness when someone is, you're working with somebody and maybe they're a super negative person and they're like, oh man, today this happened. And they like being like, saying like, oh man, this got me down and now this happened to me. And oh man, I'm feeling kind of frustrated about this. Is that actually making them happy to say those things and to complain? You know what I mean? Is that like where they're most happy?
Is complaininess a form of happiness?
I mean, I'm just asking, like, that's a really weird question. But it's like, why else would they do it unless it makes them feel better in some weird way? Do you know what I mean? Is that still achieving happiness for them, even though they're like complaining and being like, are they getting some kind of pleasure out of that, I guess? Or is that making them happier? Weird question.
I think it's not a weird question because we all deal with that, right? In fact, I did a LinkedIn thing the other day on coexisting with chronically cranky people. And, we have people
I like the title.
We're commenting on that. So it's not a weird question. And it's very situational. So we like to say happiness zappers are managed. So what is something in the last 24 hours that happened that zapped each of your happiness?
Good question.
Mark's like, I can't think of anything.
Think for a second. He's like, he's like, what do you mean zap my happiness? What does that mean? It can be zapped?
Okay, so let's just say you're vibrating on a 7 as far as how your feel good days. I'm at a 7, and it caused you to maybe go to a 6, or maybe it caused you to go to a 1 or a 0 or a negative. but it just kind of lowered your happiness feeling.
I'd say there's like a problem with a website with one of our clients, and the tool we were using to fix it was broken. So I couldn't fix it for them right away. So I was like, oh man, it's kind of a bummer. I wish I could fix it right away, because it's kind of sucks for it to not be working for the next couple of hours until I can get it working again. So that was kind of a bummer.
Right. So that falls into a couple of categories. So for you, that was, okay, so I define happiness zappers, and the principle to the book is happiness zappers are manageable. So I define them as unhappiness, stress, chaos, fear, and annoyances. So you just described something that was chaotic for the client for sure, because their site's not working, possibly out of some stress for them and stress for you. So you're dealing with some, some happiness zappers. It might even end up being an annoyance. I define annoyances as something you're not going to remember a year from now.
Okay.
But here's what's good. When this is going on, if you're just like in that space of like, well, everything happens for a reason and it's all going to work out when it works out.
Yeah.
If you're in that mindset, in that space, you're not necessarily identifying it. So that can end up being your solution, but you really do have to say, hey, this is causing some unhappiness for myself and my customer. This is causing not my best situation. So you have to identify it. That's part of doing what we call creating a Zap map, which is a Zapper management action plan. Then you divide it into
I love
controllable or uncontrollable, or a bit of both. And so probably what you were dealing with it was a little bit of both. There are certain elements you couldn't control, like when you could get it fixed because you were depending on somebody else. So that falls into that category. You may be long-term thinking, okay, now I know how to set something up so this won't happen again. So that part's maybe a controllable situation. So there's some elements to it. But then you go to at the actual plan, and in your case, you can only communicate with the customer. Hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm being told as far as when I can get what I need to do to fix it. And, then you have to wait that cycle out. Then you can put it sort of in the God box, or it'll fix what it fixes, but you have to create that plan. So when you're talking about venting or talking about it, I think it's fair to vent and talk about something so that you can find a solution. But if you're just wanting to vent so that somebody feels sorry for you, or people can say you're just a super victim. I know somebody I deal with it writes me a lot, like they hate their job, they hate this, they hate that, I'll never be happy. And I'm like, I think happiness is just way too high of an aspiration for you. And it sort of stops them in their tracks.
Whoa.
Like, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't be happy.
Well,
that's happiness is too good for you.
It's not that it isn't like big picture, but if you're in the space that you hate things, like that's the emotion you're vibrating at. For me to try to ask you, even if I'm looking at your problem and saying, hey, here's the 3 things you can do to fix this. But if you're over here in this emotion of hate, so when somebody's venting, if you will, if you're over here in this emotion, we just want to get the person to not hate. Like, let's just elevate you a little bit. Let's just elevate you to where you're just neutral. Like, maybe you just don't feel anything for it. Dislike it, like it, just in the middle. Yeah. We're just neutral. Yeah. Let's start there. And then we'll see where we want to go.
That kind of makes sense. I mean, like make it suck a little less. It's kind of like going to the doctor and you got extreme pain. You're like, well, first let's get a little painkiller in you, and then we can think about how to recover from this. Yeah,
like do you have to have surgery, or you're going to be in a cast, or or is it medication for a week? Exactly. Like sometimes our happiness is just about feeling a little bit better than the moment we felt before. So, Mark, this is what often happens when people have a higher, what I call happiness set point. So they just naturally see that glass is 3/4 full and everybody else is seeing it maybe half full. We have a tendency to want to elevate everybody with us. We want to say, I want you to feel as good as me. It's not like your intentions are bad. You're trying to be like, hey, I want you to have as much fun as I do. And the quickest way to get them to have less fun is when you're trying to pull them up. And they're not even like, and they're just slapping you. They're like, you're just even more. But
you can tell.
Chill out, man.
My wife is gonna really like to hear this.
well,
I'm gonna text her right now. Like, hey, you should tune in and listen to this episode.
So if her set point's a little bit lower than yours, because of whatever, because it's genetic. I mean, we do have a genetic predisposition to happiness. Some people just, it's like any talent we have. Some people are just more genetically predisposed to it, just like some are genetically predisposed to being depressed or bipolar. Like they may never have the same.
Now, but do you think it also can depend on maybe someone's history? Because, a lot of times I think for me is that I've experienced like probably the lowest lows that most people can experience. And so every day it's like a measurement of that. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's not that. Things are great.
And the lowest of lows for you, though, might look different than the lowest of lows for somebody else. And again, if somebody sometimes is dealing with chronic, you mentioned pain, going to a doctor. If you deal with chronic pain every day, your happiness might be a little bit different than somebody else's. So I think what is always important for it's like my friend's person who hates everything. And I think she's just trying to challenge me to try to challenge her to be happy. And she gets, what happens is it shuts down when I tell her I'm not going to try to get her to be happy. She doesn't know what to do with that because I'm not going to mirror that. I'm not going to go mirror your hate energy. That's not who I am. So I'm not going to go with her. But I also can't ask you if you're like that far away. I can't ask you to even probably be in my swimming pool, so to speak, because it's just too far.
Yeah.
I can't maybe ask you to get to a lounge chair. Like maybe come into the pool.
Right.
Maybe try to get there versus out there where it's chaos on fire. And I think if your wife, if her set point isn't what yours is, for like I said, for whatever reason, it can be from medical to you're just tired because you have a toddler or your job or your just set point's just genetically lower. I think you'll be surprised if you just sort of, let her be where she's at and you still stay where you're at. You're probably going to elevate her up a little bit more because happiness is contagious. It is contagious. Actually, if you want to try something, so next time you're just walking down the street, now you can do that again. And you can be sort of within proximity of people. Just smile. Just smile at them.
Oh, yeah. I always smile.
People instinctively smile back at you, right?
Or eat a taco. Like, have you ever seen someone frowning eating a taco? Never.
They will make you smile. There's a place, I'm in Omaha right now, and there's a place here called Hoppy Taco. And I just love to go there because it's just like fun. They sell like street tacos and Hoppy Taco.
Yes, it makes you happy.
Exactly. Just happy to have fun there and be happy. But yeah, for an experiment, and let's say for your entrepreneurs, if you're dealing with a cranky customer, for right or wrong, like let's say something just didn't go right in your business and you're having to correct the problem. Even if you don't feel like smiling, try either just talking to them on the phone or typing that message. I want you to smile while you do it, even if it's a fake smile, because that kicks off all of our happy endorphins and stuff inside of us, scientifically speaking. There was a direct sales director, and this was probably 20 years ago, that hired an acting coach to come to his sales team meeting to just teach his sales team to smile. And sales went up within 3 months by like 20%.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, that tracks for me too. If I smile and I talk to my team, all of a sudden, if I make a little joke when we're in a tough situation, like boom, like tension broken, let's start building and find a solution. But as soon as that like heaviness is broken, it just makes such a big difference, whether it's a joke, a smile, or whatever it is. That totally makes it. Same thing with sales, like you said. I've noticed for sure, if I start off a conversation smiling with the person I'm talking to, they're much more likely to smile back. And they're like, hey, you know what? This person's like, I don't know. Nobody wants to jump on a call with somebody that's just completely serious the whole time. It's like, I don't know. That's me, maybe. But it's just like that lightness helps.
Telemarketing centers notice better results when the team just smiles, and they can't see the customer or whatever. Just they're smiling. Well, again, we've kicked off these happy endorphins, which counter stress endorphins. Like, let's say when you're calling customer service, are you really usually calling because you're like, just want to say, hey, I just wanted to call and give you a kudo today that you're doing a great job. Doesn't happen a lot. So they're dealing with people are stressed out. Like something went wrong, most likely. Now, some fixes are easier than others, but something went wrong. So they're dealing with a person that's stressed, and then the less stressed they can be, the better, the more likely they're going to come to a win-win solution. And actually, you look at the book whoever has a copy of the book, look at humor. And there's a story from a guy named Terrell that's talking a little bit about what you're talking about. I think you'll find it funny. And I don't recall it verbatim, so I don't want to. That's in the 31 Types of Happiness. I don't want to misquote Terrell's story, but it's a little bit about what you're talking about creating a fun space.
That makes sense. What about when it comes to happiness, how much do expectations play into happiness to you? If you're thinking, if I'm expecting my day to be awesome, does that set me up to be disappointed, or does that actually help me be even happier? I think Mark and I probably have somewhat different experiences with this personally. I'm maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mark, but I feel like you're coming with the attitude everything's going to be awesome, and that makes you happier. And for me, sometimes setting my expectations a little lower for some reason helps me, because then my expectations are exceeded, and I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good. So.
Yeah, no, I get it, because it's just it's like the pessimist saying you know what, things are going to be terrible, and then when they're not, like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad.
Right. But people are different in that way. So yeah, Pamela, what do you think about all that?
Well, I think that's principle one of practical happiness. Happiness is personal. So it depends,
Gotcha.
It depends on who you are. So if you wake up with the expectation of, I'm going to win the lottery. Let's say you're going to I'm going to win one of those $100 million lotteries today. Well, statistically speaking, that may not happen. So your expectations may not get met, and you could be a little disappointed if you were actually already buying your mansion, if you were going on tours. So I think it depends a little bit on what your expectation is, but I do also think that is about the situation and maybe who you are as to, what works best for you. And you certainly need to do what works best for you in that situation. I know when, so the first year my mom passed away 17 years ago now. So it's been a long time. So I have no super big expectations, but everybody always says, well, the first year's the hardest. And I was 38 when it happened. So they say the first year's the hardest. So I remember that Christmas happened in September. So at Christmas, I had zero expectations. Maybe I had negative expectations about it being this kind of normal holiday. And as I finished the holiday season, which I'd really wanted to just barricade myself for 3 weeks and then come out in January.
Right.
I was like, wow, that went better than I thought. And it's because I set my expectations low. It wasn't going to take a lot to exceed them, but I set them really low.
Right.
And I had more happy moments than I thought I would, because my mother always spent a couple of weeks with me around Christmas. So I was like, okay, but it was a time for me to set low expectations. Now, most days I probably set I just assume I'm going to have a good day. I wake up and I just assume it's going to be a great day. I don't count on winning the lottery. So I do try to have that practical component. But in general, I also don't think something horrible is going to happen.
Today sucked. I didn't win the lottery.
Yeah, it is disappointing when I don't check my ticket, but I still buy them, but I don't expect it. So I do try to keep a practical, element. But in general, I'm not thinking, oh, well, I'm going to talk to somebody today who's going to be annoying, or or who's going to really poke my buttons. I mean, I wake up most days oh, it's going to be a pretty good day.
All right, we're going to pause this conversation here. Go to thefridayhabit.com. There you can find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. At the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit System that will show you how to set aside one full day each week dedicated to working on your business instead of in your business. If you're not already, make sure you subscribe. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear next week's episode, subscribe so you get notified. Also, leave us a review in Apple Podcast app or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you want to potentially be on one of our episodes with a question you ask us, go ahead and record a quick message in your phone, voice memo, and email it to hello@thefridayhabit.com. Until next time, live every day like it's Friday.